Hey guys, welcome back to the channel, and today we're gonna be reacting to
Why these billionaire skyscrapers are sinking.
Welcome to Miami, America's third tallest city.
oh
In the
my
US, only New York and Chicago, home to the very first skyscrapers, have more high-rise buildings than this corner of
I
South
thought we were
Florida.
gonna
And
see the one in New York. Miami getting the drag.
New York is not sinking.
that's quite
Uh,
impressive for a place that didn't have any skyscrapers until the mid-80s and that now has at least a dozen under construction, including its first ever super tall. The building boom, paired with the beautiful weather and coastline, has
there's
given Miami
one
some
where people can take their car and do circles on the roof. Have you seen that?
serious pulling
crazy.
power. From billionaire investors to very famous footballers, it's become a big draw for wealthy types seeking a new home for themselves, their business, or both. And it's growing, to the point where the area now has the nickname Wall Street South. But there's just one concern.
I never heard of that.
Never heard of this nickname.
No.
A study from the University of Miami says around 35 of South Florida's luxury residential buildings by the sea have been sinking.
This, of course, affects thousands of people that live in these buildings.
Researchers here in South Florida say this could be happening for a number of reasons.
A recent study has revealed that dozens of these structures appear to be sinking.
So, what are Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, Citadel hedge fund boss Ken Griffin, and venture capitalist Peter Thiel all have in common? True, they all have a lot of money, but the answer we're looking for is that they've all moved to Miami. At the same time, they've either expanded their companies in the city, relocated.
Where does Bezos live, do you know?
Oh, he bought one of the housewives' former home for his mom. So I think he's maybe in that same
You
neighborhood.
gotta be like in Star Island or something.
I don't think he's I don't think he's on Star Island. I don't think Star Island's the island to be on. I think it's in what's there? Either in Coral
You
Gables,
think he's that far
Coral
south?
Gable, either Coral Gables, not Key Biscayne, but I feel like he's not on Star Island.
He gotta be on the water though.
Yeah.
Where's water in Coral Gables?
In Coral Gables by maybe like the Coconut Grove, somewhere near there. I don't know exactly.
Them here entirely or are seriously considering it.
But I don't think
Thanks
he's
to
on
its
Star
vibrant
Island.
lifestyle, pristine beaches, and warm climate all year round, wealthy individuals and the companies they lead have been flocking to South Florida in recent years. It's probably why this region's become one of the fastest growing metropolitan areas in the whole of the US. And let's not pretend the fact that you don't have to pay state income tax here isn't a factor in all of this too. Whatever the exact reason, Miami is more popular than ever, creating huge demand for lavish new places to live and work. The problem is space. While Miami might only be slightly behind New York in America's skyscraper rankings, it's about 8 times smaller by area. That means in order to develop all these new apartments and offices, the only choice is to build upwards. It's not hard to understand why this is such an attractive stretch of
And
land
it gets
for
very
residents,
competitive because if you think you have the view, they're gonna build a taller building that obstructs your view.
businesses and developers. But apparently, this flurry of construction has produced some pretty worrying consequences.
Researchers at the University of Miami found at least 35 coastal buildings affected by what they call subsidence.
Actually, they call it subsidence, but never mind. What matters is what their study uncovered.
Oh.
That dozens of buildings along the Miami coastline appear to be sinking, and not just by a little bit either.
The report claims that over the last decade, more than 30 high rises along Miami's barrier islands have sunk by as much as 8 centimetres. And that's long after they were built, which really isn't supposed to happen.
These towers aren't limited to one part of the city. They're spread across Sunny Isles Beach, where the worst cases were found.
But
along
I
with
also believe
Surfside
that Jeff Bezos is in a house. I don't know if he's in those buildings
No, he's
per
in the
se.
house for sure. He's definitely not in no apartment. That would not make nuts. He can afford to buy the whole high rise for himself.
Bell Harbour. The buildings listed include some of the newest, most well-known, and not to mention expensive dwellings in the entire city. Porsche Design Tower, the Ritz-Carlton Residences, Trump Tower 3, all of them have been identified. And the most recently built structures, since 2014, have shown
But
some
the
of the
Trump
most
Tower
alarming
3
results.
is old. Old.
Now, you'll probably be familiar with some of those names, unless you've never heard of one of the world's biggest hotel brands or the current US president. It's that first one that's arguably the most interesting, though.
The Porsche one
Completed
is
in 2016,
interesting.
it got a lot of attention, including from us at the
The way,
So
the
Porsche
way,
one is sinking already?
the way you can go into like for when you want to put your car in a special
Wait,
elevator.
because that's where Messi lives, right? I heard
Yeah,
that Messi's
yeah,
building is sinking.
yeah.
Holy shit! I remember they just built this.
Look, it's right on the water. That's too close.
The big one
You
out.
know, every time we have to like bring in sand to kind of even maintain the beaches that we have.
All because it had 3 elevators for cars in the core of the building, so residents could drive into their apartments. As for who those homeowners are, well, they're all people with a massive net worth, but one in particular really stands out. Football superstar Lionel Messi. So, where has all this information come from?
It's all come from some very smart people down at the University of Miami, working in collaboration with the University of Houston and German research centre GFZ. They used some cutting-edge
wonder if
tech to make their
anyone's trying to
findings,
sell.
which were published in the Earth and Space
Sell,
Science
or
Journal at the
if
end
they're
of
having like an
2024.
assessment.
Professor Falk Amerling is the senior author of the report and was shocked to discover what came up when his team began investigating the buildings.
We were surprised, yes. I'm since 20 years here looking at subsidence all over the world, and I didn't even bother to really look in Miami because I didn't really expect it, yes, because we thought it's very stable, but it is not as stable as we thought.
So, why is this happening? Well, after going through the data, the team came up with a number of hypotheses, and as you might have guessed, they're all to do with what lies beneath the ground. You see, the geology of this region is a little unusual. Beneath these skyscrapers, you'll find a subsoil made up of porous limestone mixed with layers of sand. Cleverly called Miami limestone, or oolite, it's made from fossils of coral and other marine life.
Oolite.
And as this map shows, it can only be found in this specific part of Florida. According to the research, the weight of all the new buildings and the vibrations caused by their construction may have led to what's called creep deformation. That's where a solid material, like those sandy particles, begin to deform or shift after a period of prolonged stress. If that's been happening underneath the affected buildings, it could have compromised their structural stability.
But that isn't the only possible reason. The removal of groundwater during the construction of those skyscrapers may have led to sand grains being rearranged as a result.
Then there's the process of injecting stormwater into the ground after heavy rainfall. It's pretty common practice in Miami, but in Amelung's opinion, it isn't a good idea in a city built on this kind of rock.
Limestone dissolves if you add fresh water, and the mixture of fresh water and salt water is particularly.
I mean, so what are we supposed to do with all that rainwater then? If you have to put it back into the ground, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I mean, I guess don't build tall, but the water has to go into the ground.
Corrosive. The rates of corrosion or dissolution, it's very low. But maybe if you have a heavy building on top of it, that matters. So this is also a possible explanation.
So basically, understanding ground conditions when you're working with a big old bit of real estate is really important. But as I've seen on so many other projects, getting the finances wrong can also leave you with a sinking feeling. I know how difficult it can be to keep all this stuff under control. You've got to juggle accounting, estimating, actual need. It's a bit custom. Answers like now
is because the data in this study was taken from satellite imagery obtained via a very clever method.
It's called interferometric synthetic aperture radar, or INSAR, which is not an easy thing to remember or say quickly. But basically, it's where they use remote sensors to take an image of an easily measurable part of a building, like a balcony or an air conditioning unit, something like that. And then over time, they take many more images with satellite. And when they have enough of them, they can look at them, study them, and determine whether or not a building has moved and identify that movement with millimetre accuracy.
Now, it's important to state at this point that subsidence isn't rare. In fact, most new buildings will settle slightly following their construction. But it's not normal for them to sink as much as some of these structures seem to have done, and crucially for it to continue for so long after construction had finished.
This subsidence wasn't really anticipated, at least to the geotechnical report. What I saw, they talk about we're going to get subsidence for a couple of months after construction is completed, but we see it 10 years or longer.
The big question then is, how much of a concern is all this? Well, these buildings were designed to settle a little bit after they were built, but that process is supposed to stop, and apparently it hasn't. Another important thing to consider is whether they've been moving downwards at an even level, which is mostly the case here.
Wow.
But it could have been much worse.
If you have even settlement, if the whole building goes down as one, it's not a big problem. It's getting a problem if you get differential settlement. That means if you get one part going a little bit more down than the other one, that can cause then damages. We see some evidence for differential settlement, but it's not very much.
But of course, this isn't the first time that issues with Miami residences have made headlines in recent years, including one incident that sadly ended in disaster. The collapse of the Champlain Towers South in 2021.
Yeah, this is what started it all. Before this collapse, people didn't really care about this, or at least we didn't hear nothing about nothing. But when this happened, that's when everybody started investigating every building, compliance codes,
wondering where HOA fees were going.
Yeah, since this, everything has changed a lot. Well, so it's kind of like a.
And this happened during COVID times.
Yeah, I believe this was something like that. Yeah, I think so.
One saw 98 people lose their lives. It
During the
sparked an
summer.
investigation into the structural integrity of apartments and condos across Florida.
We need to find out what happened now, because we can't afford another repeat of this collapse.
After the tragedy, Amelung and his team set out to discover whether subsidence could have been an issue using that same technology. Although it turned out not to be the case at this particular site, there were some surprising insights that appeared for the rest of the city, which then led to this research being carried out.
Because with that building, there was like structural issues that were ignored overall, and it was a way much older building. And also they found like the pool where the garage was had some issues too that they ignored for a long time.
Recovery might be unusual, but there are other large cities in the US facing a similar situation. Back in 2023, a study fronted by the US Geological Survey found that New York is sinking by between 1 and 2 millimeters a year on average. Again, the weight of all the buildings is thought to be one of the main causes, especially in areas with softer soil types. Outside of America, things are far more precarious.
The situation has gotten so bad, the government is abandoning the capital and moving it 1,000 kilometers away.
Subsidence has reached such a critical point in Jakarta that it's part of the reason why Indonesia is now moving its capital entirely. And because Venice has been notoriously sinking for so many years, it had to install a very expensive, complicated, and long-delayed flood defense system.
Now, Miami isn't planning anything as drastic as that just yet, but it is still having to act. That's because it's one of the most vulnerable cities in the world when it comes to rising sea levels.
According to its latest stormwater master plan, $5 billion worth of infrastructure improvements are going to be needed over the next 9 years to protect the city from extreme flooding. That includes replacing seawalls, building new drainage walls and pump stations, and expanding inlets and pipes. The city of Miami even has a $400 million bond set aside for investments into climate resilience schemes. But yet more research from the University of Miami has delivered another cruel blow. All of this stuff might still not be enough.
Experts say 60% of Miami could be underwater by 2060.
They say the reality is the tide is coming in and eventually it won't go back out.
So the city as a whole seems to be getting prepared, even if that could all turn out to be a bit futile in the long run. But what about the people responsible for these high-rise buildings covered in the report? What do they think about the findings unearthed by this new tech?
I think some people don't believe it. Okay, can't help it. I think it needs to be shown on the ground that it's also the case. I mean, it should be, but this technique is around since a long time. It's very, very reliable. So they better believe it. If they don't believe it, okay, I can't help.
But Amelung's work hasn't entirely fallen on deaf ears within Miami.
It's such a different situation in Europe because in Europe they don't build like this tall for like residential areas.
At least one case of his research potentially influencing key decision makers in the city.
We got some response from the town of Surfside where the condo collapse happened, and they want to do some more regulations. Who knows whether it's going to happen to restrict vibrations.
If the hypotheses do turn out to be true and construction activity is causing these buildings to sink, the city's authorities, as well as developers, are surely going to need to take notice.
Especially when you look at what's to come. There are now more than a dozen skyscrapers under construction in Miami, including the city's first ever super tall. Although they're all being built outside of the problem areas identified.
He said super tall?
Yeah,
by the
that's what I heard
study,
too.
Others, like the Bentley residences, are being built firmly within them.
With building work clear.
Like the Bentley residences are.
Where do you think this is?
The Bentley residence? I don't know, but it seems like it's by itself.
Being built firmly within them.
With building work clearly going to continue here for the foreseeable future, Amelung is keen to keep monitoring the state of these buildings, but only if he gets the opportunity.
If we get some funding, then we will do more. If you don't get, then it goes very slow. But it's certainly possible in, 5 years we're going to publish another study, and then we say, oh, it was already 20 centimeters. And then people maybe will pay more attention than if it is only 8 centimeters as it is now.
Miami isn't the first city to experience a flurry of new skyscrapers in a
I wonder, what is the limit? Because it's 8 centimeters doesn't sound tragic. But what is like the limit that okay, it's too much.
Mm.
You know,
I was wondering if it's more concerning if it's uneven.
Yeah, he said it's more concerning that.
But if it's going like
if it's
down.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I wanted 8 centimeters, okay, because they said okay, some settling is expected. So how much is expected? Is it like 5 centimeters expected? Is it 2 expected? You know, because if it's 5 centimeters expected, 3 over.
He said the rate too, like the rate, like it settled down too fast.
Right, he did say too fast, but so I wonder what's the expectation or like allowed limit.
Short space of time, and it won't be the last. But what we're seeing here is perhaps a sign that not everywhere is an ideal place for high-rise construction on this scale, even if the demand is there. While there's no major cause for alarm just yet, and it could end up being nothing serious, we'll keep our eye on this and see how things go down with these buildings over the next few years.
Remember guys, if you're managing your own projects,
I don't know if it's nothing serious. I think it's serious.
Can I see the comments?
Considering Surfside building collapse, I would not joke with this. You do not want your fucking building collapsing. This is the building super tall.
We should check it out. But you know, it's not just homes, towers by the beaches, but it's also even more inland too. It's just that the way they build and maintain these buildings is not proper to like stand the test of time, because people are thinking just now, you know, pass this on to someone else. This is their problem, and to keep HOA low. So if it's low, how are you gonna have finances to maintain those buildings? You don't.
We'll see how things go down with these buildings over the next few years. I see what you did there. Vice City, thinking before GTA 6, sinking before GTA 6. There's an old proverb about building your house on sand that's probably relevant here. As a Dutch person living in a former swamp nation, don't do it. You lock yourself in an endless cycle of keeping up and maintaining. Before I bought my home in Miami, I checked the ground first. Buying a place on sand never seemed like a smart idea to me. Seems crazy to me to build such tall buildings so close to the sea.
Yeah, and they look like borders too. Like it's like on guard to the border of the beach.
Yeah.
Guys, of course, let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Join the Discord, and as always, share as much kindness as possible.